Hi everybody. If you're a classic gamer or even a modern gamer, there's a very popular cheat code that has been around for quite some time. And that is a cheat code found in many Konami published games, also known as the Konami cheat code, where if you type in a sequence of arrow presses and button presses, you will be able to activate something special, like some special power in a game or something that will give you an advantage that you wouldn't have otherwise. Hence the name cheat code. So in this video, we're going to replicate the Konami code using nothing but some HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So let's go and get started. So what I have here is I have my VS Code instance on the left-hand side and I have my browser on the right-hand side. And right now, there's nothing going on. It's a completely blank page. Let's go ahead and get started. So I'm using VS Code. And so one of the shortcuts you have with HTML pages is you can use exclamation mark and then be able to have this boilerplate starting point for your particular application. So I'm going to change my title attribute to say Konami Code, save this, refresh, make sure the title shows up in my browser as well. All right, same document being displayed in both areas. So as always, one of the first things I'm going to do is just create the HTML, add some CSS to make our page look a little bit better than just this default white background that you see here. It's entirely optional, but I think it adds a nice touch and a nice level of finesse to the pages we are creating. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and add some HTML elements. And a div id equals container, and inside this div I'm going to add a heading 1 tag h1 Konami Code, and then have a p tag as well, just containing some information. In this case, it's going to be click here to give the page focus and enter the Konami Code. This is mostly done because if we didn't do this and we didn't give our page focus, any input that we do, like pushing some arrow keys or buttons on the keyboard, won't actually result in anything happening. And that's why we have this very basic instruction set right here. All right, so add this HTML, the div element, the heading tag, and the p tag. And when we refresh this page, you can see that's currently being displayed here. Let me zoom in a bit so you can see a little bit more. And it doesn't really look all that great. Let's go and fix that by adding some very basic styling. So the first thing I'm going to do is add a background color, body background color, and let's give it a little greenish tint. So I have my notes here, C6, D8, and D3. Fancy, right? Refresh the page, you're going to see a very subtle grayish green color being given to it, and we're going to padding of 30 pixels just so that we don't have everything being on the edge of the page. And next, let's go ahead and change our default font. I mean, some people like the classic kind of fancy book style font, but I'm not one of those people. I'm a big fan of sans serif. So let me apply to my heading and p1 tags and just give it the value of sans serif. And if I refresh the page, you can now see that the font now has a more modern, computerish look to it. And let's just go ahead and wrap up the styling for the heading 1 tag. So h1, let's give it a font size of 76 pixels, make it really large, and give it a color value, hashtag 5B6361. Give it a slightly darker shade of grayish green, just so it displays better. And lastly, let's give our p tag a similar treatment as well. So font size 24 pixels. Let's give it a darker color as well, 353A39. You can use any hex value you want, by the way. I'm just choosing these because I picked them from a color palette generator, but you're free to choose whatever you wish. And just because we're asking someone to click here to give the page focus, it'd be nice to change the pointer to display something nice as well. All right, go to margin bottom, refresh the page, and now we're good to go. Let me zoom out a bit just so that we don't have to have any extra space here that needs to be accounted for. All right, let's see if everything looks good. Yep, page focus and everything looks just right. All right, so now we have the basics of the page created, the HTML and the CSS. As you can imagine though, the bulk of the work we're going to do is going to be in JavaScript. So let me add the script tags right here. And now here is where we're going to be adding all the work to make our Konami code actually work. Now, the exact set of key presses you need to press for the Konami code, or I'm going to say it out loud right now, and don't worry about memorizing it if you haven't already, but it's up, up, down, down, left, right, B, A. So you press those keys in that order, the cheat code is valid. At any point while typing that sequence of characters, if you hit the wrong key, the whole thing just falls apart. Your cheat code is not active. So it's not a case where you can type in the value, make a mistake, and then pick up from where you made the mistake and do it correctly. How does cheat code work? It has to be done in one complete sequence. If not, you have to start over from the very beginning. And that's an interesting detail to mention because by virtue of the fact that we don't resume an error, it simplifies our world a little bit. So let's go ahead and talk about how we're going to do this. The first thing is for us to be able to detect key presses. So when someone is pressing something on the keyboard, we should be able to detect that. And the next level is to detect which key they actually pressed. So let's go and get started with that one. So the way I'm going to make this work is that I'm going to create a mapping of the left key, the right key, the A and B button, and up and down keys as well, and then use that mapping to see which keys have actually been pressed. Now, there's an article I wrote on detecting key codes. Every key that you press happens to have a numerical identifier associated with it, and checking that identifier is the best way to have JavaScript know that the left key maps to this number, the right key maps to another number, and be able to go from there, because internally, our computers have no concept of our keyboard and the keys that go behind them. All they know are the key codes, the numbers that are going to it. We just happen to associate those numbers with actual letters like the A, B, C, D, and numbers and other special characters. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to create an object called keys. Let keys equal empty object. And the content of this object will be key value pairs. You know, ironic that it's key value pairs for an object called keys. And the key will be the actual key code, the numerical value of a character, and I'm going to map it to an English version of it just so that when we're writing our code, it becomes much easier to make sense of. So 37 is the first value, and its value is left. The next property or key is going to be up, and its numerical value is 38. 39 is right, and 40 is down, and 65 is A, and 66 is B. And so internally, as each key is being pressed, a number gets thrown about, but when we detect 37, 38, 39, 40, or 65, 66, we'll be able to kind of say that this is part of the Konami code, and we'll actually do something from there. Okay. So all we've done right now, of course, is just define a mapping between the numerical value of computer and JavaScript understand to more of a human understandable version of what those keys actually are. So now let's define what the Konami code actually looks like. So let Konami code, and this is going to be an array. So I'm going to do up, down, and left, right, and we'll go into a separate line actually, because otherwise it'll be difficult in the video to see what's going on. So right, so left, right, and then B and A. All right, so we have our Konami code, and just as a sanity check whenever writing this code, I like to refresh the page. I like to bring up the console and just make sure that nothing has broken in what we have right now. I'm going to bring up the console at the bottom of this page right here, bring up the console, no errors. And just for if I type in Konami code, you can now see that the array that we have defined here shows up. If I type in keys, you can see the key values that we defined are also there. So good, just a quick sanity check. I'm going to go and close the console again because we don't need it right now. We're in a good spot. Okay, so now that we've done this, the next step is to add our event listener. As each key gets pressed, we want to be able to detect what key is actually being hit. So the first thing I'm going to do is to document dot add event listener. We're listening for an event on the document itself this time, and the key event we're listening to is key down. So each time our key is pressed, this event gets fired. Type in check code and false for the whole bubbling, tunneling discussion. Okay, so now I'm going to type in the function check code, and this is where all the magic is really going to be happening. Let's give it the argument event because that's the event argument that's going to be passed into it. All right, so I'm going to declare a few variables first. One of the things we want to do is detect what key is actually being pressed. So I'm going to let key pressed equals keys e dot key code. Actually, event dot key code. And what this is doing is this: if an event dot key code is presented and it happens to match a value from our keys property, that key pressed is valid. And this is something I'm going to go through just because it's an interesting one to call out. I'm going to go console.log event.keycode, just so you can see what exactly I'm referring to when I talk about key codes if you aren't familiar with it. Let's bring up the console again. And now let's say, for example, I'm pressing Q. Notice that as I'm pressing each letter, oh, if I refresh the page, you can see a number showing up. So for letter Q, it's 81. For S, it's 83. For A, it's 65. For B, it's 66. Let me zoom in case you cannot see some of this. And what I'm trying to do now is, as each key is being pressed, especially if it's up, up, down, down, left, right, and all those various keys, that we make sure that we display the appropriate key code for what's being, what our Konami code actually is. So we detect all the keys by default, but we want to filter it down to only the keys that we actually care about, which is these 6 right here. And that's what we're doing with our key pressed variable, that is storing only the values from keys event.keycode. If it's a valid value, it gets picked. If it's not, it gets ignored, which means that by default, it is often going to be ignored if it's not the right value. So if key pressed equals Konami Code / key count. And let's actually stop right there for a second. I'm going to declare a variable called key count, because at each time we press our key on our keyboard, we want to increment. We want to go, this is the first letter, it's the first character, second character, third character, and so on. So let key count equal 0. And so what I'm going to do right now is, if key pressed equals Konami Code key count, we're going in the right direction. So key count plus plus. So this means if the first key I press is up, that means you're doing the right thing. Konami key code 1 matches our array value of up. So 38 matches the first letter, and then we increment key count. So if the next letter is being pressed, we compare it to the second value of up that you have in our array of valid keys. And so now let's continue to make sure that we keep checking that we're on the right path. So one of the things you want to make sure is that not only do you want to make sure that a key that's being pressed is part of the appropriate value, we want to make sure we're going in the right order. And the easiest way to do that is to keep count of how many times we've pressed on the keyboard, which the key count variable keeps track of, and also check where we are in our Konami code, because only if we have an accurate match do we continue going down this path. So if I click 3 times on my keyboard and I'm on the third item in the Konami code, that means that the items I pressed have been actually accurate. So if key count equals Konami code dot length, this is the first step that indicates that if I reach this part, I'm in a good spot. So I'm going to have a function called cheat code activated, and also I'm going to get a function called reset key state, because this means we have succeeded. With each key that I press, I'm at the end of my value of key count and the key count, the Konami code at length, which means I've made it all the way through successfully through my array. Okay, and so there you have that. And if for whatever reason the value does not correct, if my key press does not equal Konami code key count, in which case I clicked or I tapped on any letter that wasn't one of the 6 things that make up the Konami key code, I'm resetting key state again, because we made a mistake. No need for us to be here. All right, so now let's go ahead and just talk about function reset key state, because this is the one that gets called once our cheat code, whether we succeeded or failed, happens, because we want to go back to the very beginning. So the first thing we do is just set key count equal to 0. And right now, that's all we need to do as well, because the only thing that tracks where we are in our code is the key count variable, as it increments each time a valid key is being pressed. And next is our cheat code activated. Cheat code activated. And I'm going to do an alert. Alert cheat code activated. Okay. So if I walk through this code again, it's like, yep, each time a key is pressed, we check if it's part of the valid set of values stored by keys, and it's also the value we're in right now. At the count of it is where the Konami code is. If we reach the end of our code successfully, which is this line right here, that means our cheat code was valid, so cheat code activated, and then we reset state, which is we just reduce key count back to 0, and then if the cheat code was valid also, we do cheat code activated and do this alert. That's a lot going on, so let's double check to make sure that this is all going correctly. So I'm clicking here to give the page focus, up, up, down, down, left, right, BA. Okay, once I've done that, you can now see the alert coming up. It says cheat code activated. Is it possible to see the alert easily? No, the alert is a blocking operation, but you can see a dialog that came up that says cheat code activated. And just for kicks, if I'm typing in something that is completely invalid, like up, up, down, 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 left, right, BA, and just keep typing in keys, yep, the code doesn't exactly give an answer either because we have the right fallbacks in place. So we have the Konami code, at least as proposed, fully working. There's one thing though I like to change as well. You know, when you're typing the code, especially in a console, you can't just type in each character, wait like 5 minutes, come back, type the correct character, pick up where you left off, and have the code work. Right now, the way we have it defined is that I can do up, up, down, down, left, right, pause, get lunch, come back, type in B and then A, and the code will still be active. That's not exactly how consoles work. So what I want to do is add a timer to make sure that if I'm not typing in the cheat code quickly enough, where I have, let's say, 1 second between each key press, we reset state anyway. It's almost as if you entered the wrong code. So the way we're going to do this is I'm going to create a variable called timer ID. This will be storing just the value of our timers as we create and clear them all out. And so as we keep pressing our keys, I'm going to start a timer that says you have exactly 1 second to continue to do what you're going to be doing. So the first thing I'm going to do is just clear our timer in case we have anything going on beforehand. Clear timeout, timer ID. This ensures that as we're typing, the timer that we have going is reset back to 0. And then the next step is for me to go ahead and create another timer. So timer ID equals window.set timeout, and I'm going to call reset key state because after all, if the timer has gone beyond 1 second, that means that we no longer need to continue cheat code. We've obviously failed here. And then reset key state. And then the next step would be, now that we have the key state fully defined, is to, once we are resetting everything, to clear the timeout again, just like we did before. Kind of just cleaning up to make sure that we're set up as resetting, we're in a good spot. And just to make sure this all works fine, I'm going to create resetting state as an option. Okay, so now let's go ahead and go to the console. And let me just first make sure the code works properly again. You know, up, up, down, down, left, right, BA. Okay, cheat code activated, good. Everything is great here. Now let me go and make a mistake. Up, up, down, down, left, B. Okay, so reset state is being called, yet for some reason, I'm not seeing reset key state getting called appropriately. So what's going on here? Why is reset state not getting called? So A, B, C, oh yeah, I just forgot to refresh the page. Okay, so so I'm going to type in up, up, pause. Notice that resetting state kicks in immediately, which basically means that if I exactly 1 second, up, up, down, down, left, right, BA, cheat code properly works. I do up, up, down, down, left. I'm going to pause, and resetting state happens as well, which means that the timer is actually kicking in. So if we dilly-dally and take more than 1 second to get our keys subsequently pressed, then our code no longer works. And so I think that's a good spot for us to stop. You know, we covered a big part of keyboard event handling in this particular video, where the Konami code is a fun thing to build because it touches upon so many important topics, and also how to mentally think about some of the problems we're solving. The biggest problem we solved here was really the ability to go from, here's a finite number of keys, we want to check what we're pressing, and then once we know what keys we're going to press, make sure we're pressing them in sequence. and we looked at how we can do some simple object and array manipulation to just check for which value we're using the length of the array, using it as a counter of where we are at the end of it once the key code is activated. And then we ended by going one level deeper, something slightly more advanced, where we tried to add a timer to ensure that as you're entering these keys, you're doing it fast enough, quickly enough, so that it doesn't seem like you're kind of just dragging your feet on entering the cheat code. So hope you learned some interesting things. Hope you found this coding exercise a lot of fun. I certainly did. If you have any questions or you got stuck on any part of this, please post in the forums at forum.curve.com, where I and others would be very happy to help you out. And if you like classic video games, a lot of video gamers there, and me personally, so you can talk about that as well, and we'd be happy to just keep you entertained on that front. If you like this video, tell your friends and enemies all about it. Hit subscribe to be notified of new videos that I'll be recording and posting on a regular basis. Follow me at Kurup on Twitter, Facebook, and other locations. And if you enjoy reading and you want to read in both paperback or Kindle editions, there's a front-end book that I might have written that you might find interesting. So link for the books below. And with that, I will see you all next time.